police service members. The KDF personnel also are required to undergo prior training before deployment. Mr. Speaker, I'll move to question 3 on what measures the ministry has put in place to ensure that the future involvement of KDF in addressing instability or civilian unrest is timely to avert death that may arise and from the shortcomings of the other national security institutions. Mr. Speaker, in response to question 3, the KDF is structured to ensure continuous state of mission readiness, allowing for swift and effective response to both external and internal threats when the need arises. However, in its participation in internal security operations, these are carefully guided by the Constitution and the KDF Act, which specify notifications through gazette notice, authorization to be sought prior to the deployment, and the mandatory reports to be furnished to the National Assembly, and of course, close collaboration and cooperation with the necessary security institutions. Question 4, Mr. Speaker, on how the KDF does balance the internal security needs of the state and the sanctity of civilians' lives when dealing with internal instability or unrest. Mr. Speaker, the involvement of KDF in internal security matters, as I have said, is governed under the Constitution and the law, KDF Act. Section 3 of the Act provides that KDF shall, in fulfilling its mandate, observe and uphold the Bill of Rights, values and principles under the Constitution, in terms of striving for the highest standards of professionalism and discipline among its members. KDF is also to comply with constitutional standards of human rights and fundamental freedoms and dignity, as well as the requirement for sufficient training of staff before such deployments. Mr. Speaker, guided by the aforesaid constitutional and statutory dictates, the KDF is deeply committed to professionalism and operates within customary rules of engagement that prioritize the protection of civilians. And this approach entails the employment of non-lethal methods whenever possible and the use of minimum force consistent with the achievement of the mission in accordance with the laid out standard operating procedures. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Tomojenda, you may ask your 2 supplementary questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a follow-up supplementary question. Let me thank the CS Defense, Madam the Honorable Soipan Tuya, Senator, for the response to the structured questions. However, Mr. Speaker, just one question I want the CS to highlight. No doubt, Mr. Speaker, reference is made to parliamentary approval for intervention and to keeping with the tenets under Article 241(3) and the involvement of the National Security Council where there are threats for internal intervention. I want the CS to clarify, and this is the delicate line, between inability of the National Police Service to deal with internal strife and the point at which the KDF will intervene, because when answering question 3, I think you have not dealt with the question of threshold. At what point is it deemed fit for KDF to intervene when there's a real threat and the National Police Service is unable to contain the threat? And I'm asking this, Mr. Speaker, because at times an intervention can be a little too late. And lastly, Madam CS, I've seen other jurisdictions like Burkina Faso, where security, I think, is interpreted to include food security, security in a wider sense. And KDF, the KDF of that country, is involved, spends most of its time in food production, other than, whatever it is, spends more time in food production and other activities other than just staying in the barracks until there is a threat of security to the country. Is there anything that we can do to ensure that our forces do other things, to ensure that we take care of the other issues, other security issues, other than simply fighting?
Honorable CS, note down those two questions. You will take more, and then when you raise to respond, you respond to them at a go. Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam CS, I saw a very curious statement from your ministry on the 17th of March 2025 regarding the circumstances surrounding the deployment of KDF in July of 2024. As you know, I am a firm believer in the freedom of the media. And we must accept that we were all very concerned to see the army in the streets after the protests. And my party leader has addressed certain possibilities given histories in other places, including Sudan and Egypt. What, in your view, or in the view of the ministry, was inaccurate in the report by the Daily Nation regarding the very possibility of this country being handed over to the military in the event the regime collapsed in July of 2024? So you need to tell us, because the statement said that the report by the Daily Nation was false, baseless, misleading, and reckless. Please explain to me what was the basis of that conclusion by your ministry. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Chute Mohammed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me thank the CS for her eloquency, and we are really proud of you. My question would be a bit of our discussion today. There is a court case. No. Let me align it back again, please, Honorable Speaker. I am bringing it back. There is a court case that was brought by one Mr. Murusi in Karare on the land that was acquired by KDF. And the court ruled that KDF should vacate that property. Can the minister please tell us what action she has taken so far? Because the people of Karare want to know when the KDF are going to vacate that land. Thank you very much.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplementary question is on question number 3, set by the Senator of Kisumu, Senator Ojenda. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to know from the CS, at a point where the national security has failed, whether because of capacity or other misgivings, and then KDF has come in, like what we saw last year during the Gen Z protests. KDF has taken over to make sure that they can ensure there is peace and there is stability. Do they also take over the mess that has been created by inadequacy of the national security organ? Like the messes that we saw where, for instance, young people were killed and property were destroyed. Does that assumption only limit KDF to the issue of dealing with restoring peace, or does it extend to dealing with the mess that has been created at that time by the national security organ? And if that is so, then what does the ministry think of dealing with the mess that was created at that time, including what this House passed on the resolution of compensating young people who were affected and were killed during that protest? And this House has pronounced itself through a resolution on dealing with those messes. Is the ministry taking over that because the national security organs failed, as demonstrated? Thank you, Chair.
Senator Kathuri.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I really want to congratulate our CS, Senator Soipan, who before she was appointed as CS, she was one of us in this House, Mr. Speaker, and she has not let us down this far. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is, actually first is to really congratulate the KDF joint operation in the North Rift and the National Police Service, because they restored enormous in the North Rift, Baringo area, Samburu, the Baragoi area. For the first time, shops are open in that area, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to thank them for that joint operation. But, Honorable Speaker, the other areas, sometimes I get restrained to talk about other areas, especially where I come from, Mr. Speaker. But to request whether the National Security Council can also consider also deploying the KDF to other areas which have similar problems with the North Rift, especially the border between Nyambene region of Meru County and the Isiolo Samburu border, Mr. Speaker. If they can at least consider even doing an operation to wipe out or to weed out the illegal arms which are in that area, Mr. Speaker, because what happened to give them a hand start.
Senator Kamau.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also ask a supplementary question. Honorable Speaker, I wanted to know from the Minister, what is the Minister of Defense doing, and whether the CS is aware that on 13th of March 2025, a heavily armed militia, believed to be Al-Shabaab, invaded a village in Mangai, in Kiunga, a village in Mangai, in Basuba ward in Lamu County, and that they were in pursuit of an area chief and NPR, who helps in maintaining law and order in that area. Honorable Speaker, it is believed that the militia got an opportunity to address members of the public and force them to even take the days that they were having. Honorable Speaker, since then, the members of the public have been living in fear in that area of not knowing where the militias will strike next and what will happen. Honorable Speaker, I wanted to know from the Minister, what is the Ministry doing to see to it that they safeguard those citizens that live in those areas? Final question, Mr. Speaker. I want
entitled
it is
only one.
In addition to that, it is only,
you cannot add, Honorable Senator.
I'm finishing, Honorable Speaker. Let me finish.
Already finished.
Kindly,
Senator
it is
Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to request the CS to take, when you go back to the generals, to take our greetings and our appreciation for their professionalism and discipline as a unit of security in this country. Having said that, I'm a little bit apprehensive listening to you and reading the Constitution. It is not clear. Minister, once the forces are deployed, what self-propelling mechanism has the National Security Council put in place to ensure that once they are deployed, they do not roll into taking over government?
Senator Wambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you cannot fail to notice that Senator Medu today is very, very well dressed. The hair looks good. Mr. Speaker, there's one thing, Mr. Speaker, that I have not told you. It's a lot of things I have not told you. I have not told this House. That at some point in my life, I lived in the barracks. My father is a former Army officer, that time Army, Kenya Army. And so matters security and matters defense are very close to my heart. Mr. Speaker, the world over, armies are trained basically to do three things. Basically. Whether it's explicit or not, but basically do three things. One is to fight. Two is to kill. And three is to die for the motherland. That is the basic training of any army anywhere in the world, including Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I would want to know from the CS, our colleague, Senator Soipan Tuya. When in July 2024, the KDF was unleashed on our streets, first of all, what battalion is it that was released to the streets? What was the mandate of their mission? Because the mandate must be very, very clear. As a Speaker, the Gazette notice that released the KDF to the streets, has it been revoked? Or are they in the streets in perpetuity? The Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, when the minister was answering, she gave two examples and said in the North Rift, where they were carrying out Maliza Uhalifu operation, the Inspector General of Police was in charge, and the defense forces were supporting. In our neighbor, Lamu County, when they were doing a money burning operation, it is the Chief of Defense Forces who was in command. The question I wanted to ask the minister, we have the highest respect for our defense forces as a nation, and the discipline and the respect, we admire them. But what we wanted to know, in fact, the question is not on their primary duties, which is the territorial protection of this nation. The question always arises on their secondary duties, which is, getting into civilian mix, and you have explained it very well. Why is it that you don't have a law specific for that? Don't quote the Constitution. Constitution gives general principles. Why don't you have a law specific on deployment of the army for civilian purposes? And the reason I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, is that when you go to some projects, even construction projects, you are told these ones are not going to be advertised. It's the army which will do it. We have no doubt that the army can do it. But why isn't there a proper legal framework which is going to be, debated by the representatives of the people and made clear? And this is a suggestion, Honorable CS, that it is time, because all these questions are around the law, the application of how does the army get mixed with civilian life. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Majaya.
Asante mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, nataka kuuliza swali kwa waziri. Waziri, swali ambalo nataka kuuliza ni kwamba kuna sehemu kubwa sana ya shamba ambalo wale wanajeshi wa Mariakani Army Barracks wamelichukua ama wanaishi hapo. Sehemu kubwa sana ya shamba ambapo wale familia husika imeweza kutupwa nje na wamejaribu sana kuweza kupata hiyo ardhi yao, na mpaka hivi sasa bado hawajaipata. Wizara yako imechukua hatua gani kuona kwamba lile shamba ambalo ile familia imedhulumiwa pale Mariakani, na alafu imedhulumiwa na wanajeshi ambao wananchi sasa hawawezi kufanya chochote kwa sababu ni wanajeshi ndio wanaketi hapo, na ile shamba na hakika unajua ya kwamba ile shamba wakati ami ikienda pale wananchi wenyewe walikuwa wanaishi pale kama familia. Ni hatua gani umechukua kuregesha hiyo shamba kwa wale wakaazi ama wenyewe hiyo shamba wanaoishi hapo Mariakani, ile familia? Umefanya hatua gani kuona kwamba hiyo shamba imeweza kurudi kwao? Asante.
Senator Mundegi. Senator Murgo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I have a question about North Rift situation. The situation definitely CS is very conducive and it is quiet now. But once in a while, we get a reaction. I mean, there is no perfection yet. You will find that maybe one of those thugs will go to one side and do something that is unexpected. But the reaction from KDF is equally disastrous because they beat people all over generally and even kill and shoot cows and all this. Could this be a matter of a camp or a unit overstaying in a place until probably they begin to not be up to what they went for? Because it seems like they are now not up to what they went for, but other things that are equally violent.
Senator Mofire.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question is to our former colleague, CS Soipan Tuya. Honorable Speaker, there is a very old tradition in this country that whenever we have a recruitment, especially the military recruitment, there is a lot of hue and cry from the public where people will go to an extent of even disposing their property to get money so that their sons and daughters can be recruited in the military. This, Honorable Speaker, has created a very imbalanced recruitment because only those who can afford to pay for that recruitment get their sons and daughters recruited in the military. We have had cases where parents have lost money through fraudsters. Get somebody who has requests you to get him some money so that maybe your son or daughter can be recruited in the military. In this case, Honorable Speaker, we have denied our poor parents an opportunity to get their sons and daughters serve in the military. So what is this that the ministry is doing? Because this is cancerous. It has been with us for a very long time. I don't know. I have not even captured any sentiment from the ministry for that matter and raising that pertinent issue that is affecting our parents across the country. What is your ministry doing to make sure that this bad habit stops forthwith?
Now, before I allow the Honorable CS to respond, Honorable Senators, allow me to remind you that a supplementary question is a question that flows from the primary question. Now, the questions by Senator Mohamed Chute, Senator Mazayo of Kilifi, and Senator Mofaya do not qualify to be supplementary questions. However, I will allow the Honorable CS, if she's able to adequately respond to those three questions, you may proceed to respond as you respond to the other supplementary questions. If you're not in a position, you can undertake to provide a more detailed response to those three questions. Honorable CS, you may now take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The questions are a bit too many, but I will give an attempt to respond to all of them adequately. And I'll go in order of the way they were posed to me. The question by the Honorable Senator Tom Ojenda on what the threshold is for the KDF stepping in to contain threats, internal threats, in support of the National Police Service. And Mr. Speaker, I had demonstrated that there is a continuous engagement between the national security organs through the National Security Council and the National Security Committee, and we deal with situational analysis of security situations on a very regular basis. So this is just to assure the country and this House that in as much as we don't have a scientific threshold to this effect, any matters that require the intervention of KDF, and this has been demonstrated over time, are done in a timely fashion. And this is in support of the National Police Service. And it is not to say that the police are not doing their work. It is because we have serious security challenges that emerge every so often, and that support then is required from the Kenya Defence Forces. The second question, Mr. Speaker, was asked by, I'm sorry, I did not indicate the name of the senator, who was asking what other duties, no, this is Senator Ojenda still, what other duties, apart from the KDF sitting to wait for...
Senator Ojenda, may you listen to the CS in silence.
The Honorable Senator, Professor, Senior Counsel Tom Ojenda, Senator for Kisumu County. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the KDF, our soldiers don't just sit in the barracks. There is a lot of involvement in humanitarian and civic activities all across the country in support of communities, and this is in the area of water security, schools, school infrastructure, and roads. And I'm sure we can attest to this at the various levels of involvement of the KDF in different parts of the country. Mr. Speaker, we also have a very serious defense industry unit of the KDF, where we have semi-autonomous government agencies, an example being the Kenya Meat Commission and the Kenya Ordnance Factories, KOFSI, which engage in a number of activities away from fighting and the core mandate of our personnel. Mr. Speaker, the question by the Senator of Nairobi, Honorable Sifuna, on what was inaccurate about the article by the Nation Media Group. Mr. Speaker, to the extent that the article referred to a military coup, I can only say that it is indeed baseless, it is inaccurate, and reckless. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, question by Senator Chute, in as much as it has been declared inadmissible by the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are seized of the matter of the Karare land, and I want to appreciate the support of the Senator. We have had discussions, even this morning. He accosted me as I was walking into the House, and we are going to advance the discussions as agreed, Mr. Speaker, and we will need the support of the leadership of Marsabit County, because the military base that is intended to be set up in Marsabit is for the interest of the Kenyans, the Kenya population in general, and more specifically, those communities affected by insecurity situations in Marsabit. The other interests espoused by the different parties are also pertinent, and we are going to address that through the means that we have agreed on. Honorable Senator for Migori, on the question of the limits of what KDF should and can do once deployed, Mr. Speaker, the definition of deployment is very clear, as stated under the Constitution, and KDF does not undertake investigations, does not undertake any form of arrest, or dealing with any internal criminal liability issues. There are institutions that are tasked with that mandate, and the role of the KDF then is restricted to restoring stability and leave all these other issues to the relevant agencies of government, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Deputy Speaker, Senator Kaduri, thank you for admitting that the support of KDF to the National Police Service is indeed working in the North Rift, and this has been attested to by the Senator for West Pokot County. We appreciate that feedback. And I want to say that, unfortunately, we also cannot be everywhere as KDF. But like I said, in instances where the insecurity has gone down in the North Rift but is escalating in other parts of the country, that is noted, Mr. Speaker. And these are the issues that are in constant deliberation between the national security organs, and where need be, and the procedures are very clear, KDF, if called upon, will then come in to support the National Police Service in the areas that were stated, Isiolo, Meru, and these other parts of the country where the internal strife seems to be escalating in as much as the North Rift is looking good. Senator Thuku of Lamu, the incident, a very fresh incident of March 13th. Yes, I'm aware of the incident in Kiunga, and it is a matter that is actively under investigation. And like I said, the KDF is actively deployed in Lamu under the Operation Amani Boni, and I will therefore not wish to comment on the processes that are undergoing with regards to this specific case of invasion in Lamu that involved the chiefs and other people in the area. But Mr. Speaker, I would like the Senator to rest assured that the matter is actively under investigation, and I'm sure he knows, as the Senator of Lamu, how to plug himself in and know what is happening, and I invite him to have a discussion outside this House. The Honorable Senator for Kakamega County, I will pass the greetings to the generals, and they could, most probably they are watching, and thank you for appreciating their role. The scope and duration for deployment of KDF is clearly spelled out even the deployment that happened on June 25th, you know it involves a court matter, which is still active in court. And the scope, as defined by the Constitution and the relevant laws, cannot allow for a degeneration, because even the duration is clearly defined as to how long the KDF then continue to be deployed in these situations. The National Security Council is also properly designed to monitor constantly, and remember, this is a multi-agency outfit, to make sure that the deployments remain within the confines of the Constitution. Senator for Kitui County, Honorable Wambua. The question on the confines of the operation, I think the question is as to whether the Gazette still subsists for